Saturday, August 14th, around 2 o'clock p.m. and we are just going to take a walk down Yonge Street from Bloor. I'm expecting down to about Queen. So we're just coming up to Yonge now, and what I'm going to do today is just look back at a lot of the different changes that have gone on since Yonge, and maybe point at some of the few things that are still existing from when I first started coming down here in the early 1980s. So there's been lots of changes since then, and we can start right across the street here. This building, and that used to be where Harvey's was. The queue is over there by where the subway entrance is, and there were some small offices. That was just, I think, a low 2-3 rise building. And then this block, which is the southwest corner, was the Stollerys building, which I believe was built in the 1920s and just went down recently. And more movement for condos. Also on this block was the Uptown Theatre, where I've definitely gone and seen many different shows over the years. And then the stores that are remaining have seen a variety of changes. The ones that I remember was there was a McDonald's down here. Not much else. There was a noodle house at the end there, at the corner. And yeah, where 401 Games was, that used to be McDonald's, if I'm not mistaken. This location is now the McDonald's, which I'll try to get a better shot of once I'm across the street. building was Noah's Ark Games, and it had the original bridge to the Star Trek Enterprise on the 3rd floor. That was kind of its unique little piece. And it was there late 70s, early 80s. Originally Postal Station F was what that building was. We're just going to cross over now. I think I'm getting too much sun on the other side. Let's see what we get. Hopefully that wind's not going to be too deafening. This has gone through a few different types of cafes, but last one I remember was Country Style being there. And across the way we have the Duke of Gloucester, which looks like it has closed down. And I remember on the lower level, on the street level here, where you're seeing the Indian cuisine and the meat dumplings. That was Alfred's Fish and Chips back in the early 80s. And just next to me here, the old building of Church of Scientology, which is now shut down, and the building is sitting vacant. And if we go back across the street there, and we get to the corner of Isabella, was the House of Lords, which was a really famous dressing place, I guess in the 70s and 80s and even into the 90s. If you went in, you'd see pictures of rock stars that got in their haircut there. I believe David Bowie was up there, Ted Nugent, Robert Plant, just to name a few right off the top of my head. And over here at the corner where that Thank Coffee is, I don't know if you can make that out on this, but that was the original Domino's Club back in the early 80s, late 70s probably even. So maybe home base of the punk movement in Toronto at one point. And right across the street where that overgrown garden is was notorious for being able to see punk rockers at any time, especially on a Saturday this time of the day. It would have just been filled. So I'm going to keep going down now. Rock Variety, one of the last rock head shops, I guess, on Yonge Street. The originals. I seem to remember that always being there. Morningstar, which used to have a larger store on this side of Yonge Street, has gone down in size. Going. side streets. Don't know how well you can see that with the sun shining as it is. So now we're coming up to St. Joseph Street. St. Joseph was notorious, I guess, in the early 80s as being a night spot. I'll just take a quick peek down there because I will also hit another landmark. So it's been greatly renovated since. We go down here. Now, condos and such, but where the Wixon Social is, if you went up the stairs, you would have ended up at the Voodoo Club.
So you did know that?
This would have been the Manatee Club. And here, which is now 11 residences, would have been Biorhythm at one point, another club along here. Now on a Friday or Saturday night, you could come along here in the 80s in the summer, and it would just be lined with people into the wee hours of the morning. So, enough of this detour though, we'll get back to Yonge Street. As we turn the corner here, and we see Nick's Sports Shop, which used to be south of Wellesley. That is actually the Gasworks, where it goes, I guess, hard rock, heavy metal bar of Toronto in the 80s. Biggest reference, I guess, for it, it's a local, would be in Wayne's World, where they go to the Gasworks, and that was inspired by this bar that was there, which was the Gasworks. Now, right next to the Gasworks, where it's all boarded up now, that was Hercules Surplus, an army surplus store. And I guess it closed down, I'm thinking in the 90s. But it was kind of probably the biggest army surplus store in the city at that time. Definitely I bought a few things there over the years. lots of little stores along here. A few empty ones, but I'm not so surprised I'm not seeing more empty ones, which is good. I'm sorry to see Eliot's Bookshop gone though, because I was going to say there's a business that's still going that's been here for quite some time. But unfortunately, Eliot's is gone. And now we're at Wellesley. Wellesley, if we were going to go down that way, would bring us into the village. And down this way would be Queen's Park, the Ontario Legislature. This LCBO has been there since I can remember in different manifestations. Now along here are a group of small little stores that are now being replaced by another glass and steel condo. Nothing that memorable along that stretch except for the little pizza place at the corner. I went and got my first panzerotti, if I remember right. Now, panzerotti was considered kind of exotic back at that point. Which definitely says how much the food options have improved in Toronto. Nothing wrong with the panzerotti, but definitely we have such a vast choice of cuisine now, which is just amazing. Anything from anywhere in the world, pretty much. One of the things I do love about this city. coming up to this condo site. You're going to see a clock tower there. I'm hoping you can get a good look at it. Now that clock tower has to be preserved. It was a clock tower from a fire station that was located here, I believe, built in the late 1800s. I'll check that date later. It was also the site of St. Charles Bar, which was a well-known gay bar in the city in the 1980s. I guess even in the early 70s. It's probably the best known one in Toronto at its time, and was one of the few ones at its time. Now across from me is the Marriott Hotel. It would have been the Westbury back in the 80s. I believe it was the Best Western at the time. Okay, so we're coming up to Yonge College, and on the other side of the street would be Yonge Carlton. So if you went down this way, you would end up in Cabbagetown, and you could go down that way and towards Kensington Market. Be one of the locations. Also Fran's over there, and Market, you can see it. Let's bring your attention to this building here. This was originally the Colonial, which was a premier type theatre at its time. Big stars. I know the one that I've seen referenced frequently is Marilyn Monroe has seen screenings there. An older style piece of architecture here. A building that I don't know anything really about, but I've always loved the architecture of. Fran's again, and you have the police headquarters just down there. I'd like to get a better shot of College Park, so I'm going to cross the street again and do that. So that would be down towards Bay, and then University and Spadina. Here we're looking at College Park. Currently has a Winners in it. Tim Hortons in the corner. Enter College subway station there. Has provincial courts upstairs. Originally though, this was Eaton's College Street. It was designed by Lady Eaton. Has a very Art Deco type design to it when you go inside. Nice marble, very clean lines. Definitely a very interesting building. It also has the Carlu condos attached to it. So very much a piece of Toronto's history. I remember as a child went with Eaton's College Street, going there to see plays with my mom, or going up to the dining room, and they would have a Sunday buffet, which was basically a Sunday where tray would come over, a Sunday card, I guess, and I just thought it was the best thing ever as a kid. Here's the entrance to the Curlew condos. And now we're coming up to the Aura, which is one of, if not the tallest, residential dwelling in Toronto. I believe it's 75 stories. Not one of my favorite buildings. I've been around it. The grounds look nice. I'm just not very fond of the architecture. I remember the first time seeing it coming down the Don Valley Parkway in a cab. I was looking towards the skyline. I saw that. I didn't recognize it. I hadn't been there before. And in honesty, it looked like the Mystery of Love to me. So, not what you would call something attractive. And hopefully that wind's not deafening everything. Now we're coming up to Gerrard Street now, so Yonge and Gerrard. Now, right here, set back from the street because there would have been a parking lot here, was the Glass Head Shop in the early 80s. And on this corner was a movie theater as well. I don't think I've ever had anything close to the stature of the Colonial. If I remember right, it was one of the 24-hour theaters where they just ran very B-rated movies. On the opposite corner where this construction is, there was a croissant place there for years, which is rather famous. Next to it was the Big Slice, a famous spot for pizza. Definitely became a landmark. And a lot of different stores have been in and out of here. Behind all this construction, you can see Ryerson University. This seems rather appropriate. Body and Spirit Cannabis. Growing up, that was, you'd go up some stairs and you would end up at Jack Flash, which was a head shop, which also had a lot of rock and roll paraphernalia, buttons, patches, posters.
I'll be in the moment.
And then we come to the corner here, which is Ryerson University. Originally was home of Sam the Record Man, famous for spinning records that would have been out here in Neon Lights, which are now down at Young Dundas Square. Despite the fact that when Ryerson bought this land, the guarantee was that they would be put back up here. But Ryerson felt their design didn't complement that. So now one of the lost pieces, probably at the corner here, was quite a little bit of a sidewalk area, and there were concrete chess tables that you would be able to go see guys play chess who all day, old retired guys sit there all day playing chess, and they were just phenomenal. There was one guy there who he had a standing bet. If you could beat him, he'd pay you $500. I never heard they had to pay it. So now where this outdoor market was, I believe, was right where one of the arcades was there. It was the Pinball Arcade, I believe. I can't remember the name of it. It was downstairs, lots of plastic lights that go into it. And then where Tokyo Smoke is, that was HMV. And prior to that, it was Japan Camera. And it's a piece of showing how far back it went. Its big attraction was it was one of the first stores to offer 24-hour developing, and later 1-hour developing film for your camera. So along here we have, coming up to Dundas, so this new building here, I guess there was an arcade that was here, Playland, probably right around where Retaliation Sushi Burrito is. I would imagine that's what they got. The Brown Derby was here also as a restaurant. And here's Atrium on the Bay. And this is the Pickle Barrel. And there is Young Dundas Square. It would normally be really busy with some events. Looks like there might be a protest of some sort going on over there today. And Young Dundas Square, now the drumming's going on. Someone's selling ice cream or some type of promotion for ice cream. Be an edit I have to do. Now across the street here where you see the construction here, the lower level was the Hard Rock Cafe. Now up above that, when I was growing up, was Domino's Club, the second one, after it moved from Isabella up by House of Lords, which we saw earlier. And the entrance was over there where that person in the wheelchair is, the walker. To Mirvish Theatre, where Hamilton was supposed to have been playing up to May 17th and nothing has since. They're still just in phase 3 and theaters haven't opened for live performances. Now I've got the Eaton Centre to the right of me. And we're coming up to probably one of the most important parts of Yonge Street, the most important sites, and there won't be anything marking it. And that would be where the van store is now. In the late 70s, that was a massage parlor called Charlie's Angels. And it was on that rooftop that the body of a 12-year-old shoeshine boy, Emanuel Jaques, was found. That led to a massive cleanup of Yonge Street, along with the notorious bathhouse raids of the early 80s. There's lots of information on Emanuel Jaques. I'd encourage you to go read up on it. Just the impact it did have on the city is huge. the impact it had on the Portuguese community. And maybe a video that would be worth me making one day, but far too much detail to be going into right here. Then you have Burger King, which has been there forever. And where this is opening here, or Money Mart opened during construction, son. That was your McDonald's that was on Yonge Street in, I guess, into the 90s. So, when it's changed. So we'll go over these. So at the corner here, so now a gym called Sweat and Tonic. Kind of a somewhat appropriate name. I can remember when this was the Silver Rail, which was one of the first cocktail bars in Toronto. Again, a very Art Nouveau type design. I remember going in there with friends one time. I said, well, we were over seeing a movie and went out for a drink after, and said, why don't we go there? And they were just blown away by just how nice of a bar it was. It just wasn't, it was one of a kind in Toronto, I'd say. And a shame we lost it. But I wish Sweat and Tonic all the best. Now when you look down here, you'll see Massey Hall covered up. I think it just celebrated its 116th birthday in July. Piece of trivia there for you. These two older buildings, I believe, were both banks. I know the second one was. I'm not sure what the first one here was, but it definitely has that banking design. And then the second one, which was probably one of the original branches of the Canada Bank of Commerce, or CIBC, probably was the origins of it. And probably one of its first branches.
So I used to never know what to get at Starbucks there. I just found it so confusing.
And then here we have the Elgin and Winter Garden theaters. Boarded up at the moment because, again, no plays are being done right now. Growing up for me, that was the Imperial 6 movie theater. It had originally been the Elgin. That was the Imperial 6, and it still had all the red carpets and everything. Always looked so grand. But nice to see it go back to its origins. And live theater is alive and well in Toronto. will be again, we hope. And across here we've got a modern branch of the Bank of Montreal, and probably one of the original branches of the Bank of Montreal. That's the corner of Queen and Yonge. Sorry, I have no change. Thank you. I'm just looking eastbound on Queen there. And here's Saks Fifth Avenue. It used to be the Hudson Bay Centre, but originally would have been Simpsons. And Simpsons went out of business, I guess, in the late 80s. And Eaton's followed in the early 90s. And Eaton's, I can remember when Eaton's was right there. Well, there was a Woolco there, and then Eaton. And then there was Simpsons over here. And those were the two big department stores in Toronto at the time. And if you had told anyone that they were going to be out of business, they wouldn't believe you. There's the bridge over to between the Bay and Saks Fifth Avenue in the Eaton Centre. And looking there where Harry Rosen is now. That's quite the contrast, because where Harry Rosen is
I don't need a cup.
once was McDonald's. So quite the change there. And what I think I'll do is I'm going to loop back up along the side street here. One piece that always seems to get forgotten when I watch Toronto walks is the Church of the Holy Trinity, which is up right behind the Eaton Centre, and it's worth going up to take a look at that. It also swings by Old City Hall. So we're on Queen Street right now. If we were to continue, that would take us into Queen Street West. A busy and popular shopping area with also some restaurants and bars in it. We're going to scoot up here. along James Street. And there is Old City Hall. New City Hall is just on the other side of it. We'll do another day. And here is the Duke of Richmond, which was one of my favorite pubs in its old location, which was right in the Eaton Centre. One of the few things I ever went to regularly in the Eaton Centre. I haven't been to it since it moved to this location, so I really can't speak to how it was. It was a great pub back in the day. And a slightly different look at the Eaton Centre. Most people don't see. It's one of its western entrances. This one at Albert. And over here is the Labyrinth. Something that many people would use for a form of meditation. And coming up now is the Church of the Holy Trinity. This is a quick sidebar. This restaurant here is the location that the Duke of Richmond, the pub I just mentioned, was at when I used to go to it. So, I'm just going to do a walk around of it. I hadn't really prepared for this, so I'll give you a little brief history by reading the plaque up here. Here is the Toronto Homeless Memorial. People who have passed as they passed away due to exposure outside for the most part and other mishaps. But this church was built in 1847. It was a gift from Mary Lambert's, well, of Yorkshire, England, who stipulated that the seats be free and unappropriate forever. And that was important at that point because this was a very poor neighborhood. People used to buy pews. They couldn't do that in this church and still can't. Yeah, charge pew rentals. Couldn't do that. Bishop John Strawn, famous man in Toronto, consecrated the church, and Harry Scadding was the first rector. So this goes back to 1847 and serviced the poor of an area known as the Ward at the time. Something I'll do a video on in the near future. It's a personal piece, personal part of Toronto history for me. I find it fascinating. So, what I always loved about this is I'd be in the Eaton Centre. I could come back here and just feel like I'm going away from everything. You feel like you're miles from the hustle and bustle of North America's busiest mall, and you're only footsteps away. No, I hadn't really planned on coming up to this part, but I'm happy I did. I always like just seeing this church and walking around the grounds. It's just kind of a calming influence. If you're ever downtown and just need somewhere quiet, this is a great spot to go. Just remember, it's right out the exit, right by the Zara in the Eaton Centre. And with that, I'd like to thank you for joining my walk, and we'll see you all soon.